Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 from Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Gordon Ross. Joining me in the studio this evening for a change live and not on Skype is Sam Payton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign. Welcome back to the studio, Sam. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, hasn't it, Gordon? It certainly has. It's nice to be back. A bit strange.
Yeah, but nice. Strange in a nice
yeah.
way. Our other guest this evening, who will be joining us just shortly, you'll see his lovely face in the centre of your screen, is Chris Stephen. And Chris, I can see you right in the middle between us at the moment on the screen. And Chris Stephen MP is joining us from Westminster. Welcome to the programme for the first time, I think, that I've done this, Chris.
No, you're mistaken. I think this is now my third time on the 7.
Excellent.
So yeah, it must have been so memorable the last time that you've forgotten all about it.
Probably. I got a terrible memory, Chris. Anyway, I have to dive into our coronavirus update, as usual, as part of our programme every night. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 258,399 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK's regional testing centres. And of these, 240,158 were confirmed negative. 18,241 were positive, and there are now 5 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. For the 4th day in a row, there are 0 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all of those with symptoms will be tested. Of the people who have been tested positive, 452 were in hospital last night, with 5 of those in intensive care, plus 5 more people in intensive care with suspected COVID-19. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by coronavirus COVID-19 infection remains at 2,482. This number only includes those who have died in hospital, having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 43,575 people who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from the illness, an increase of 25. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just to hospitals. Now, moving on to our first story this evening, and that is pressure on the Tory government over asylum accommodation. The SNP has called for an urgent independent inquiry into asylum accommodation and an overhaul of the Tory government's treatment of asylum seekers following the Glasgow attack. Leading an urgent question in the House of Commons, Alison Thewlish MP expressed her condolences to the victims of the knife attack in her constituency and praised the brave response of the emergency services. The Glasgow Central MP pointed to concerns raised repeatedly by SNP MPs with Tory ministers about the treatment and the accommodation of asylum seekers, and she called for an apology from the UK government for the treatment of asylum seekers in Glasgow and for a launch of an urgent independent inquiry into asylum accommodation. She also called for the suspension of the UK government's contract with Mears following the admission that the company had conducted no vulnerability assessment despite previous claims. She's also called for the immediate reinstatement and uplift of the asylum support allowance so that asylum seekers have the financial support that they need. They've also called for the UK government to work with Glasgow City Council, the Scottish Government, organisations and the refugees themselves to return them to appropriate accommodation. And pressure is now growing on the Tory government over its treatment of asylum seekers, particularly after the decision by the Home Office contractor Mears to move 321 people from initial accommodation in serviced flats in Glasgow into city centre hotels at the start of the lockdown without consulting the Glasgow City Council or anyone else. Now, Chris, this is obviously the topic that we were going to discuss with you this evening, since you were in the chamber this afternoon and listening to the conversations between the SNP and the government. What has been said, first of all, about asylum seekers? Surely they're covered by the Human Rights Act and they're entitled to suitable accommodation, first of all.
Well, you would think so. But let's maybe take it back a wee bit. I had secured an adjournment debate 2 weeks ago where we had reiterated a lot of the concerns which we expressed again today. We've got real problems here. We've got the mere spin and we've got ministers reading out what mayors are telling them, and every time that happens, and in fact, on every single occasion, every time that's happened, what we've seen is that that unravel, and that their claims not being the case. There are just now too many discrepancies between what the Home Office and mayors are saying and the reality on the ground. It is ludicrous, Graham, that support organisations like, for example, Scottish Refugee Council have to submit supplementary evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee to correct the inaccuracies of witnesses from mayors. So there's a whole range of issues going on here. It's quite clear that in general terms, since the end of March, decisions were taken, as Alison said today and was reiterated by colleagues, decisions were taken in March with no consultation with Glasgow City Council, no consultation with the support organisations like Scottish Refugee Council, ASH, Positive Action for Housing, the Red Cross. All of these organisations weren't consulted. There was a decision made. And I think that what we have seen today is some acknowledgement from the Minister today that I think he gets the fact that he's not getting told the whole story. Too many discrepancies. And I think that one of the scandals that's emerging is the fact that there was no vulnerability assessment at all carried out prior to asylum seekers being placed into hotels. So we've got people who have went through traumatic experiences in their life already, and my heart really goes out to all of those who were caught up in Friday's tragedy. I just can't contemplate some of the scenes that I've read about of what that whole hotel reception was like. Must have been a really traumatic experience for people.
Of course.
And I think that what we're seeing is a continuation of the hostile environment from the UK government.
Chris, can I ask you, did the contractors, mayors, give any indication at all about why they had decided to move these hundreds of people from what seemed to be appropriate accommodation into hotels before lockdown? What was the reason that they were going for this?
Yeah, the excuse appears to be that it was public health and COVID. Now, that's just a nonsense when you think about it, because if someone is displaying symptoms of COVID, would you rather have them in a secure accommodation, one bedroom, or would you have them in a hotel where social distancing is impossible? Yeah. Just a completely nonsensical argument. I think that our concern is that people were placed into hotels because it was cheaper to place them into hotels than it was to place them into flats or apartments. So
this was really just a case of what was the cheapest option then, Chris? Can I ask
I think that's my view, Graham. I mean, that's my view, that it was a cost-cutting measure. Because I just do not believe, and I don't think that the claims from mayors about this complying with public health, that social distancing was taking place, that food was of a cultural and good standard. None of those claims are standing up to any scrutiny. And what I would say to you, Graham, is I'm a trustee of Feeding Britain, and Feeding Britain had to step in and provide funding to charitable organisations in the city of Glasgow to ensure that proper food was being prepared for these asylum seekers. Scandalous. The other, of course, issue, which I think is something that we really need to look at, is the fact that placing them in hotels meant that they were not getting the support payments that they would be due from the UK government. £39 a week, yeah, it's not much. But if you count the hundreds of people who were not getting that support, that's a cost saving as well.
Chris, is it true also that the asylum seekers themselves, when they're placed in accommodation, they're not allowed, am I correct in this, they're not allowed to talk to each other, and they're not allowed to talk to anybody outside of their own immediate family? Is this correct?
Well, I mean,
they seem to be isolated.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I think that's what they were told, but that's not really possible in a hotel, is it? It's not possible to not have a conversation with somebody in the corridor with you, or someone when you're asked to go to the canteen to get your food. So that again just doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. Public health is not a reason. What we're seeing right across the board, Graham, just the mere spin unravelling the merest questions being asked either by politicians, support organisations or journalists.
Okay, Chris, well, listen, thank you for that. I think I'll move to Sam now, because Sam, I'm sorry, you've been waiting patiently here for
No,
for a
I'm
while.
quite interested listening to what Chris has got
Yeah,
to
I
say.
noticed you're
about this.
writing down, Sam.
Yeah.
You got some questions for Chris as well?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, Chris, I've got some questions for you. I've just done a quick sum. My maths is not up to speed. And basically, £39 a week for £321. I'm getting round about just over 10,000 mark a week they've been saving on payments. Now, that is absolutely ludicrous to then have basically charities to then kind of step in and then feed people as well. Surely there's got to be more questions asked about what mayors have been doing with the funding and what they've been doing with the money that have been granted to them by the Home Office.
Well, be absolutely certain about this, and I'll say this to all of yours watching, yourself, Sam and Graham, we'll be very clear on this. The Glasgow MPs collectively are not letting this go. This will be the job centre campaigns on steroids. We are not letting this profit-making company, away with their scandalous behaviour that we've seen since the end of March. And you're right, you've picked up on just the basic cost cutting and cost savings that would be to the Home Office. Absolutely, completely and utterly scandalous that they would make those savings against the most vulnerable in our society. And just to put into perspective, actually, what you've been mentioning about £39 a week, just put that in perspective. I was earning about that 30 years ago when I was a youth trainee for Strathclyde Regional Council.
Yeah.
I was a trainee for Strathclyde Regional Council as well, and I got the same amount many years ago. And it's not a lot, even all the years ago, it wasn't a lot of money. And, you know, even in this day and age, it's not a lot of money for somebody to be able to go and buy basic supplies, even personal products and things like hygiene products and things. It's not a lot of money for one person to live off of. It's disgraceful, and basically it's just unthinkable to think that that mayors or the Home Office or both of them thought that was appropriate. And the fact that they've had no consultation with the council or any support organisations. What happened when these people were placed into this hotel networks? Was there any access to counsellors or health advice or anything for these people, or translators or anything like that at all that they should have had access for? Because at the end of the day, they've came from very traumatic backgrounds. They've came over here to escape trauma. Surely it's just common sense to have counsellors in place, to have, access to medical health care. That's just basic.
Well, it is just basic. And, you'll appreciate, Sam, that some of these asylum seekers, the women in particular, have been subjected to sexual violence.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
I mean, this is the whole, I think, emerging scandal around the lack of a vulnerability risk assessment and the decision as to who should be placed in hotel accommodation and who shouldn't. The other point you pick up, I think, is a very pertinent one as well, and it's something that I'd referred to in my adjournment debate 2 weeks ago from testimony from Glasgow South West constituents, is that if you add up the cost of hand sanitizer and the other products which people are being encouraged to buy for health reasons and in health grounds, that doesn't leave a lot for food for an asylum seeker who's on £39 a week does it. And so, there's a whole emerging scandal. And just to reiterate the mistake that the government's compounding it by is that they've increased the state support by 26 pence a week. 26 pence is the retail value of a Freddo bar in Glasgow.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Has there been any movement at all, Chris, from the government on reviewing the mayor's contract, or have they just decided to turn their face against that?
Well, I don't think they've yet turned their face against it. I think that I'm certainly picking up the emerging, not just political pressure, but the media pressure as well. I mean, I spent most of my weekend, and I'm going to have to spend some of my week this week catching up, because I think just about every hour, just a half hour, there was a journalist on the phone just trying to get the background story about what's been going on in terms of the points we've made in the adjournment debate. So a lot of the so-called mainstream media are playing catch-up now. I think that has made a lot and has helped contributed to the pressure that's now going on in the Home Office. The Minister's now committed to a meeting with Glasgow MPs, and you'll know as well that there's a meeting going to be with the Scottish Government. We've said to Minister Philip today, the quicker that meeting takes place with us, the better. So we can get clearer answers to basic questions, which is not what we've had so far.
Chris, you're saying that it's difficult to get clear answers to simple questions. My sort of final question for you would be, who is the most appropriate body or person to decide on what appropriate accommodation is for asylum seekers? Surely it's the people who are dealing with them in the place where they've ended up, who speak to them.
These contracts should never have been outsourced in the first place. This is the usual conservative way of trying to, as they put it, cut the cost of government by outsourcing services to organisations that are not equipped to do the job.
Yeah.
We've seen Oxford and Shipman being a disaster. We've seen the Serco disaster and the Glasgow uprising last year in terms of the threats to evict asylum seekers by a lock change without going to court. And we're now seeing the present disaster of sending and bundling asylum seekers into hotels, because Sam's question's a pertinent one. Some of these asylum seekers had their clothes in washing machines, or there was food on the table, and they were told you've got an hour's notice to pack your things, moved from a service apartment and placed into a hotel for 12 weeks. Hotels aren't equipped for 12 weeks of living, are they? So I think that what you're going to see is this story develop, and I think that it's almost inevitable that an urgent, independent investigation will take place. I'm absolutely convinced that that's now the only way that we can address a lot of the issues that are outstanding.
All right, thank you, Chris. Will there be Will there be any fatal accident inquiries? Do you know? I think that was the question.
I don't know about that. I mean, I know. One of the questions we're asking is that this is now the second death at asylum accommodation where asylum seekers have been placed into hotels. We've asked for the process of what happens when there is a death in accommodation. That's another outstanding question. I would imagine, given the events surrounding the tragedy on Friday, that there will be some process that the police will certainly have to carry out. I don't know the detail of that, but again, one of the issues here is that what do the Home Office do, and what do the contractor mayors do when there is a death in accommodation? Because we need to know what then takes place and what then happens. Because my understanding is the first gentleman who died, his personal belongings were taken away, and his family don't have access to that, which I think again is just an inhumane way of treating our fellow human beings and our fellow Glaswegians. Because you'll know, Graham, and Sam will know, there's only one rule to be a Glaswegian, and that's if you've stayed in Glasgow for a minimum of 24 hours and you're a Glaswegian for the rest.
This is true. Sam,
unless of course you're a fascist.
okay,
Yeah.
Sam, I think did you have something else you wanted to ask?
Yes,
Chris, before
Chris,
we
I
end
hope
this?
you don't mind. I'm kind of butting in here. What I would like to ask is, see any of the people that witnessed this on Friday, have they received any support or counselling since Friday? Because I know, according to social media reports, a lot of them were left still on the street at 10:30 on Friday evening with nowhere to go. So have any of these people now been given some counselling services and things, or have mayors basically abandoned them?
My understanding is that the Health and Social Care Partnership have stepped in relation to the specific incident on Friday, and that there have been counselling services, and I think that's where there was a discovery of trafficked women in the hotels. I've seen the same media reports as you, Sam, that there were people who were obviously outside. It is a crime scene. They can't go back to it for obvious reasons. But yes, there has certainly been, I think, some concern that asylum seekers were then placed into other hotel accommodation without their personal belongings, which is why there was that fantastic campaign that the Unity Centre had launched today, asking fellow Glaswegians to donate clothes and phones and phone chargers and the like. And my understanding from my office manager who was there today, the great Rosa Sally, is that Glasgow rose up to the occasion, and that what we saw was a marvellous demonstration of fellow Glaswegians looking after their fellow Glaswegians.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one more thing. Now that they've been put into other hotels, sorry Gordon, I'm just totally thing with you. See the hotel staff, this is my other concern, are the hotel staff receiving training and support to be able to support these people? Because because if the support's not there, even for the staff themselves, they don't know if they're helping a situation or not helping a situation. So what's happening with the hotel staff that actually work in these hotels?
Well, my understanding is that's not clear, but my understanding of what we've been told is that there are mere support officers and support workers in the hotel now.
Right.
What level of support that is, I don't know. Obviously, the 6 people who were injured on the tragic events of Friday are a police officer, some hotel staff, and a member of mere staff, is my understanding, and support officer. But again, I think that those are the sort of questions that we are seeking answers to, because I think that it's not just the politicians that want to know. I think that the support organisations want to know, but I think more importantly, I think the general public deserve to know answers to these questions.
Okay. Listen, I think that is an excellent point to finish that particular item. And so we're going to move on to our next item this evening, which is, of course, the blueprint for economic recovery. A UK-wide £80 billion stimulus package should be created to regenerate the economy and to reduce inequalities following the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. It's been proposed in a new Scottish Government report launched today by the Finance Secretary Kate Forbes. The package could finance temporary reductions in VAT and move the tourism and hospitality industries onto a reduced VAT rate of 5%. A 2p cut in employers' national insurance contributions to reduce the cost of hiring staff is also recommended in the report entitled COVID-19 UK Fiscal Path, a New Approach. Other action that it proposes the UK government should take to kickstart the economy includes introducing a jobs guarantee scheme for young people and to extend the sector-specific employment and business support schemes. Also to create a national debt plan to help businesses and household budgets to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Also to adopt new fiscal rules which prioritise economic stimulus over deficit reduction in times of crisis, and also to accelerate major investment in low carbon initiatives, energy efficiency and digital infrastructure, and finally to extend Scotland's financial powers to allow it to reshape its own response to the pandemic. Now, I think, Chris, You will probably be about to tell me that the UK government would pretty much reject this proposal out of hand. Have they done so, as far as you know?
Well, I think it's the usual poo-pooing that you see from Tory ministers, and shouting that things are reserved and their responsibility. I think there's a number of things that are happening. I mean, certainly, and I think any elected member will tell you this, is that we've never been busier. Certainly, the number of people who've needed support, the number of businesses who have needed support, has been considerable. And we've got, for all the spin from the government that it was a generous package, there are still about 3 million people who are falling through the cracks, whether it's self-employed because they're actually not self-employed, it's bogus self-employment. Those who took the decision maybe to set up a limited company in their name are falling through the cracks. And we're seeing all sorts of individuals falling through the cracks. What I thought was fascinating was the Treasury Select Committee asked the Chancellor to sort that out, and there doesn't seem to be any basis of sorting that out. So I think that's a first concern. Second concern I've got was an answer to a question last week from Boris Johnson to a question I asked him about why government departments were issuing redundancy notices to its own workers. And his answer was that he wants to cut the cost of government. And my very real concern here is that we're going to see some sort of austerity Mark II. And the last thing that anyone in these islands needs is continued or more austerity.
Well, of course, Mr. Johnson himself very recently was quoted as saying that he was not going to bring back austerity in the post-COVID-19 era, and it was all going to be wonderful, and there was going to be, money invested in huge public infrastructure projects all across the United Kingdom. And yet, as you say, they seem to ignore the current problems of what they've already created.
Well, they are ignoring the current problems. But you've said about the public infrastructure project. Where is this magical bridge from Scotland to Northern Ireland? Where is that happening? That was supposed to be one of these first commitments.
Or is it a tunnel?
Or a tunnel, or whatever the hell it was. I think we can suggest that's not taking place. What I find fascinating, probably in the last 4 or 5 weeks, is that the Sunday Times or the Telegraph has a story placed about what the government's going to announce, and the government's going to do X, Y, and Z, and then it's all denied within the next day or two. I've got a very real concern that it's a Tory government with a majority, that the answer today, they think the answers are to cut government spending, and that's austerity to me, and I think that's austerity to the public out there.
Okay.
What we also need, and we're looking at this in the Department of Works, the Work and Pension Select Committee, is trying to help those who have missed out, is looking at the huge rise in universal credit payments. And I think that what this particular crisis has exposed overall is that we really do need to look at the issue of a citizen's or universal basic income. And that is something that the Select Committee is going to be looking at in the next couple of months. And I think that that's something that's welcome. And I certainly welcome the results of pilots that are taking place in Scotland and the Scottish Government's position on this. And for me, the next independence referendum, a universal basic income, has to be a major plank of the independence offer.
Okay, well, listen, Chris, a positive way to end that story. So we're moving on now to the high street now, and the public are being encouraged to shop local as retail businesses across the country reopen today. Under the move to phase 2 of the Scottish Government's route map out of lockdown, street access retail can now reopen once guidance has been implemented. Today also marks the easing of restrictions on house moves, outdoor markets, construction sector, factories, warehouses, labs and research facilities. Retail is an essential part of Scotland's communities and is one of the country's largest employers. The reopening is underpinned by a new Scottish Government campaign to ensure shopping is safe. The national campaign, which includes posters for retailers, encourages the public to enjoy shopping again as they safely support businesses in their local area. It asks shoppers to pay attention to signs, guidance and instructions from shop staff, to shop outside of peak hours and to follow the current health guidance, and this includes the wearing of face coverings. Chris, if you forgive me for a moment, I'd like to ask Sam a little bit about this story, because we spoke briefly, Sam, in the last few weeks about the idea of retail therapy.
Yeah.
How important is retail therapy, do you think, to your average Scot who's been in lockdown for weeks on end?
Well, we've seen crazy queues, haven't we, this morning, which is, to me, is just a bit madness and crazy, because the retail therapy to me is like, oh my goodness, my worst nightmare.
You're not a shopper, Sam?
No, I'm not a shopper. You know, I'm very much one of those ones, you go into the shop, buy what you've got to go, and straight back out. Or I'm standing outside with the men, you know, while the kids are in the shops.
I was going to say, you're holding a handbag, Bill.
Yeah, you know, it's normally my kid. I've got 3 boys and they love shopping. So I'm normally standing outside the shop, kind of twiddling my fingers and on the phone and things like that, blathering to the men that are standing holding the handbag. But yeah, I think now more than ever it's so important for people to be shopping locally and supporting local businesses, especially after everything that everybody's went through. And as Chris was saying previously, there's so many self-employed people and things that have fell through the cracks who have not been able to get any support. So it's very important now more than ever for people to support these businesses. But yes, and to do it safely. And that's the main thing, is to do it safely. Wear your facial coverings and just be a bit
sensible.
Sensible, yeah, common sense.
Yeah. Chris, how important do you think it is now? Let me rephrase this a little bit. Is it, do you think, better the way that the SNP, I like your mask, by the way.
I love it.
What I was going to say was, do we agree, Chris, that it's a better idea that the SNP has of introducing shoppers to shopping through their local shops first, the ones which really need their business more than anybody else, before the big stores, which obviously can take the hit, reopen?
Yes, it is. And the reason I was using the face covering is because Sam mentioned it, and for those asking, my wife's been making them, so I've one for every day. Obviously, I had to wear this face covering on the train going to London this morning. But I think I think to put matters in simple terms, I think that what we're now seeing is the different approaches across the UK. It's actually a one-nation approach versus a three-nation approach, because you've got the Westminster government, I think now, under pressure from their own backbenchers, are making a calculation now to save the economy at the expense of public health, whereas I think the three devolved administrations are taking a more careful approach, which is that public health is fundamental here. Because without public health and good public health, you don't have an economy. And I think that's one of the key differences we're seeing going forward. And I think that people should shop locally. I've always tried to encourage that. I think that, but we are seeing, and I think we do need to be careful as we, and everybody has to be careful what they're doing. It's quite tempting to, go out in the park and go out in the shop and, just to try and, for your own peace of mind. But just to make sure everybody needs to act responsibly, because if we don't, then there's going to be a longer lockdown that will have to take place in order to save our fellow human beings.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And also thank you, Sam, for your comments. We're moving on now to, unfortunately, a rather bad news story, which is that the Work and Pensions Secretary, Theresa Coffey, has indicated that benefit sanctions will be reintroduced this week as UK job centres reopen after the lockdown, saying that it was important that claimant rules were reinstated. Face-to-face meetings in job centres were suspended in March, and with them, the system of claimant conditionality, beg your pardon, a set of rules that require people to agree to carry out job search activities as a condition of claiming benefits. The Labour Party had demanded the suspension be extended, arguing that it was untenable to reinstate sanctions when unemployment was rising. Job vacancies were dropping and people were shielding and schools were still closed. Speaking in the House of Commons, Coffey refused to extend the arrangements after the 3-week period finished on Tuesday. And it's important that as the job centres fully reopen this week, we reinstate the need for having claimant commitment, she said. Now, Chris, I know that you know full well what these penalties involve. We all do. And that these sanctions are universally hated. And surely bringing them back at a point like this is madness when so many people, as have been pointed out, are jobless or are unable to earn any money at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's two strands to this. I think that you're saying it's madness. I think it's unenforceable. If you can imagine going to a job centre, being asked, well, how many jobs have you applied for? There's not that many job vacancies out there at this current time. In fact, very much the opposite.
Yeah.
If you want to work for an airline, you've got British Airways hiring and firing folk. Trying to rehire them after they're fired.
Call centres are shut as well, Chris, as well. Yeah.
You've got that. You've got Rolls-Royce, who are making a redundancy. So if you're someone who wants to try in engineering or something like that, again, difficult.
Yeah.
The shops. A lot of the shops are still closed. A lot of businesses are still closed. So it's just not. It's not enforceable. And I think the second strand to it, which I think is not just for job centre staff, but actually is another issue which I think is going to be newsworthy over the next few weeks, is that they decided, without consulting anybody, that job centres should be reopened. They didn't consult PCS, the trade union, so they made that decision to do that in England. So they've decided to expose potentially job centre staff to COVID. And I think that this is something that we're going to have to keep tabs on. I mean, it's the same in this Mat House down here at Westminster. There was no consultation with the trade unions when the Tories decided to force people back down here, and we're all having to be careful. We've got to make sure that when we're asking people to go back, that it's a safe working environment.
Yeah.
And some of the work that I've been carrying out, and I think the STUC have certainly risen to the occasion during COVID, is we've got to make sure that there's no return to an unsafe workplace anywhere. And I've got a very real concern that there are rogue employers out there who are going to try and force that issue.
I noticed, Chris, one notable exception to the face covering rule today, actually. And in my own family, we're going to give blood today. And the face coverings are actually banned in the blood donor centre because they're worried of people lacking oxygen as they come out of the centre. And therefore wearing a face mask would actually cause them to pass out. But this is one of the very, very few exceptions to the rule.
Well, asthmatic conditions as well. I mean, I've had some constituents on to me with asthmatic conditions where the face cover is not appropriate, and
only if it's safe, of course.
Well, but there has to be a safe working environment, and that does include having an agreed risk assessment. Now, you will have seen the farce a couple of weeks ago when we had this conga where Tory MPs didn't know their names, didn't let alone how they were voting, and how long that took. That was a health and safety disaster. But someone somewhere in Parliament had carried out a risk assessment saying that was a safe working
was
environment.
Was it Jacob Rees-Mogg that did the assessment?
There has to be agreed. Risk assessments should be one of the key demands that any worker has going back to their workplace.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to leave the subject of risk assessments for the moment and look at another risk now. 100 offenders have been arrested in the past 6 months, and 180 children have been protected as a result of Police Scotland investigations into online child abuse. Officers from Police Scotland Internet Investigations Unit have prepared over 350 national online child abuse prevention packages since January. The no-cap packages provide intelligence and evidence which underpins investigations carried out by both Police Scotland's National Child Abuse Investigation Unit and local policing divisions to identify and apprehend online child abusers. The Assistant Chief Constable Duncan Sloan, the Major Crime and Public Protection Lead for Police Scotland, said online child sexual abuse is a national threat, with advancements in technology, online functions and platforms giving predators ever-evolving opportunity to target children. Behind every downloaded image, every attempt to groom or extort is a child being victimised by a faceless predator. Police Scotland works with a wide range of partners, nationally and internationally, and from all sectors, including the law enforcement agencies, the internet service providers, and the third sector organisations, to identify perpetrators and to tackle the threat and build safer online communities. Now, Chris, if I can just ask you to hold on for a moment. I wanted to ask Sam immediately about this, because Sam, you're a parent, and I know that you have your wee boy with you in the studio today. Did this shock you when you heard this piece of news that 180 children had to be protected?
I should really say it shocked me, but it doesn't, because the threat is out there. And
so it didn't surprise you?
No, it didn't, because the threat is out there and it's very, very real. As a mum, it is quite scary, and you know, as a mum of boys, or girls, you know, it doesn't matter, but children anyway, it's very... the online world is quite a scary place for children, or for parents with children.
Yeah.
And the problem is a lot of parents out there believe that once they set the parental controls on a device,
that everything's okay.
Everything's okay, and that is not the case. It's about constantly monitoring what your kids are doing, what sites they're on, and who they're on with, and especially at the moment with lockdown, because like my wee one, they are online more often. At the moment, and it has been with my wee one, he does use platforms like YouTube and things like that, but what we have done with him, he's got two big brothers who are more tech savvy than I am.
They keep an eye on him, do
they keep an eye. His account is tied to their account, so same with his gaming and things like that, so they can watch. They're more aware, they're more savvy about what's going on.
It's almost a little bit like, you know, when your big brother used to protect you.
Yes, it's that kind of level. Yeah, it's just it's done on online. So, but very much every now and again, I will go on and I will get the older boys will teach me wee bits and things, because technology does change very quickly. These people do find ways round things very quickly. So my boys are quite good at keeping me up to date, but it scares me. I mean, my wee one, my youngest, as you've met, is 8, and it's amazing the amount of 8-year-olds who have smartphones.
Indeed, yeah.
And they go out to play with them, and they are not monitored. And yes, they need to learn and they need to have a certain amount of freedom, but they need to be protected, and parents need to be monitoring what they're doing.
Fair enough. Chris, I don't know much about you. Chris, do you have children yourself? And would this report have worried you reading it for the first time?
Well, I don't have children, but I'm blessed with 3 nieces and nephews who light up my day when I see their photographs on Facebook and what they've been up to and all of that, because I haven't seen them for a number of months, as you could imagine. I think it's probably 2 things here. I think that people will be encouraged by the fact that the police are dealing with these sorts of issues. I think that will provide some public confidence that the police are keeping on top of this. But I think Sam's right. There's obviously the responsibility of parents, but not just parents, but grandparents and uncles, aunts, and other family members, to make sure that young family members are looking at things they should be looking at. But obviously, you know, you have to be vigilant as well, because, you know, some of these predators are pretending they're children, pretending that they're somebody they're not, and that's obviously something that that obviously people have to be vigilant on. Certainly, my nieces and nephews are still at the Peppa Pig Paw Patrol stage, which is you know, a whole entertainment in itself.
It sure is.
I used to be able to rhyme off all the Paw Patrol characters, but I haven't seen my niece and nephews for a while, so I'd be stumped if you were to ask me now. But it's something the next time I'm on.
We won't do that to you, Chris.
Well, the one I remember is Chase from Paw Patrol. Yeah, that's the one I always remember.
It's not my debut, Graham, so the next time I'm on, that'll be one of the questions.
Okay, well, listen, Chris, thank you for that. We are running a little bit low on time, so we're going to move on a little quickly now. Now, the United Nations top human rights official, Michelle Bachelet, today called on Israel to halt the illegal plans to annex part of the occupied Palestinian territory on the West Bank and warned that it could lead to deadly clashes. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to extend Israeli sovereignty over Jewish settlements in the territory has drawn condemnation from Palestinians, US Arab allies and other foreign governments. His cabinet is due to begin the formal annexation deliberations on Wednesday, July the 1st. Annexation is illegal, period, Bachelet said in a statement. I'm deeply concerned that even the most minimalist form of annexation would lead to increased violence and loss of life as walls are erected, security forces deployed, and the two populations brought into closer proximity. Chris, this is obviously a very worrying development in the Middle East. What's your view on this? Do you have an opinion on what should happen?
Deeply worrying, and you can see the concern. I'm pleased to see that United Nations intervention. Very pleased to see Mike Russell writing as well on behalf of the Scottish Government. This is a very real issue which a large number of constituents have written to me about and other MPs about as well. I'm very concerned at the direction of travel here from the Israeli government. Sadly, Netanyahu got back. I thought there was going to be an opportunity for him to be defeated at the elections, but he sadly won. But I'm very, very, very concerned at the treatment of Palestine by Israel, and I'm delighted to see the United Nations take a stand here. And I think we all have a responsibility to ensure that the Palestinian people are better where they should be.
Chris, can you tell us if the United Kingdom government has made any comment about this development at all? Have they come out with a statement?
I haven't seen any, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't. I certainly haven't seen any yet, but I think that we'll continue to ask them what their position is, and we've got a large number of parliamentary colleagues who are in the SNP Friends of Palestine. We won't be letting the issue go, and I'm sure that I haven't seen a UK government response yet. It's something we'll need to continue to work on, make sure that we get not just a response, but the correct response.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Moving on. Okay, back to Scotland again and the resumption of cervical smearing. Oh, screening. Sorry, Sam. That was a slip of the tongue. I do apologise. Some NHS Scotland national screening programmes, which were paused in March due to the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak, are set to resume safely, carefully and in a series of stages. From today, Monday the 29th of June, anyone who was invited for a cervical screening before the pause and is yet to make an appointment or had their appointment cancelled will be able to contact their GP practice to make an appointment. Appointment invitations and reminders will be posted from mid-July, with invitations sent first to those who received more frequent non-routine cervical screening appointments. The routine screening will recommence once NHS Scotland has caught up with non-routine appointments affected by the pause. Now, as a woman, Sam, you know, I do apologise for my slip of the tongue at the start of the story. Because everybody calls it cervical, it's a smear test, and sometimes the two get conflated. But this is surely good news for many women. It's reassuring news.
It is, but it's one of those ones every woman will know that when you get that letter, you just go,
oh, God.
Oh, no, really? Okay, right, okay. But it's something we need to do, and it's about our health and quite a lot of times our lives, and we've got to do it. So it's very much one of those ones. Yeah, it might not be something you really want to do, but yeah, you need to do it, and you go along if you get your appointment.
It's just one of those things, I guess.
Yes.
It's a little bit like a male prostate exam. It's just something you don't
you've
relish.
Got to do it. You don't want to, you don't look forward to it, but you've got to do it. And it's, you just need to pull up the socks or as we say within my female friends, pull the big girl pants on and get on with it.
The big girl.
Yeah, put the big girl pants on and get on with it. Yes.
Okay, well, Chris, do you have any kind of comment on this one? I know this is a little bit out of our normal sort of sphere of influence, shall we say?
I'll say, yeah. Well, I'll say no. I mean, I don't think there's anything to be added, but I think that people will just be encouraged that these sorts of things are getting taken up again, because obviously you have constituents who are concerned about, health appointments being cancelled and other, operations being cancelled, all of that. So I think it's, people are encouraged that these sort of things are starting again. I have no viewpoint at all about girls' big pants at all. Well, it would be best if my silence would be, I think, appropriate.
Very, very diplomatically put there, Chris. Thank you. One of the other things that struck me when I read this story at first, despite the fact that I completely mispronounced the first few words of it, is the fact that there must be so many medical procedures that are backlogged at the moment, and a lot of people are waiting for dental treatment. And I know that dentists, because I hear from them a lot, are complaining that, especially the ones who are in private practice, that they're worried that they're going to go under. Is there anything happening at UK government level at the moment which indicates when dentists might be able to get back to some kind of normality?
Not that I'm aware of, but I know that, I was due a check-up on the 27th of March, which got cancelled. So, again, we have to welcome these things, but we have to make sure that we're doing this slowly with people's health and the general public health.
Yeah, we know that emergency dental procedures are back, so I'm guessing this is just the start of it. So, Sam, we've talked about health matters on this programme many times in the past. How important is it, do you think, that the Scottish Government gets this right? Because people going into hospital at the moment, many people not going to hospital because A, they don't want to put pressure on the system, and B, some of them fear, particularly elderly people, that they might pick up the infection. Is the government doing enough, do you think, to encourage them?
Well, what is enough to encourage people? It's about reassurance and building that confidence back up again. Yeah. And, when people, now that appointments are starting to come around, clinics are starting to reopen, it's about building that confidence and just that constant reassurance that
it's okay,
and it's safe and we've got everything in place. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. There will be people who will cancel their appointments because they're frightened, but might not want to admit they're frightened. So it's being able to offer something else, some sort of other service or alternative way. Can you maybe go to your GP surgery instead? Depending on the consultation or the clinic. I don't think there's an easy answer to that one. I really don't think there is an easy way to kind of encourage people to, apart from reassurance and confidence. Yeah.
Chris, I had one last question for you on the subject of health, because we're on the subject. And that was, I heard recently a government minister in the Scottish Government saying that the disease, the COVID-19 disease, is going to be with us possibly for years to come. And having thought about that, it dawned on me the fact that the whole of the medical profession in Scotland may have to completely rejig on an almost permanent basis now. Has that actually been planned for yet by the SNP government? Have they thought about this?
Well, I'm sure they have. I'm obviously,
I know you're in London.
Way above my humble pay grades, but certainly I think the general point of principle you make there is an important one, is that there is no cure for COVID. And we're all going to have to think about how we interact and engage and just, things that we took for granted and things that we would normally do, but you need to think about in the interests of public health, the interests of our family members, how we do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully a cure will be found at some stage, but yes, we're going to have to deal with this in a way that protects public health.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Of course, I should just remind everybody that for, I think, the fourth day in a row, There have been no deaths due to COVID-19 in Scotland at all. And this is a testament to the Scottish Government's strategy on this, I think. OK, now to our last story of the evening, which is about universities and colleges. And new guidance has been published to help Scotland's colleges and universities to prepare for a safe and phased return to campus. The guidance has been developed in partnership with colleges, universities, the Scottish Funding Council, trades unions and student bodies. The institutions are planning a phased return with a blended model of remote and limited campus learning in Phase 3 of the Scottish Government's route map. The essential preparations can already take place while on campus. University research and home moves for student accommodation can resume from today, the 29th of June. Chris, again, a good news story here. Scottish Government and all the stakeholders involved in higher education and further education have got their act together. How important is this, do you think, not only to Scottish students, but to the Scottish economy, to get the research going and to get education and international students back to our universities?
Vital for the economy and going forward, as you say, research. Also for students who want to, go back to an environment of learning. And again, hopefully that has all been agreed with the trade unions as well, that phased approach. And because if they haven't, I'll not be happy. But it's vital that we start to do this slowly, but we have to do it at a pace which protects public health. Keep saying that. I know I've said that on many occasions tonight, but it really is so important, because if any of this goes wrong, it's a longer lockdown that's going to come.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me, and I think, Sam, I don't know if you picked up on this, but particularly here in Glasgow, where we are, the university had up to about 8,000 foreign students, mostly from China and Southeast Asia, staying in Glasgow in accommodation here. How important do you think that the social distancing is going to be with regards to those pupils returning, those students returning to university?
Well, it's like any students returning. It's all about, as Chris was saying, it's got to be done slowly, and I don't think it matters where they're coming from in the world. It's just about everything's got to be safe. It's got to be done slowly. It's got to be a phased return, and making sure their accommodation is appropriate as well. Because a lot of students sometimes end up living in shared accommodations. And Glasgow, Edinburgh, Stirling, and it's making sure that the accommodations is safe as well, and doing the blended education is actually a really good idea, and I actually agree with that. I actually agree with that for the schools as well. Blended education, I think it's a fantastic way forward. So it takes a lot of pressure off of people, but it's all about doing it slowly and getting it right.
And also having, a realistic means
Yes.
of educating young people with what we have.
Yes,
to
with
hand
the
at the moment,
resources
what
that
we're
we've
allowed
got.
to do.
Because the thing is, COVID's not disappeared, and it's not going to disappear.
Yeah.
If we open up too quickly, if we rush into things, and everything goes back in the one day, you are open up the chances of COVID taking hold again, which we don't want. So a phased approach, a blended education approach, taking it slowly, one step at a time, making sure the students that are going to be living in the cities and that are away from home are going to be safe, making sure the students are going to be commuting are going to be safe as well.
Yeah.
Because it's and just taking it one step at a time, baby steps.
Okay, well, thank you, Sam. We're getting towards the end of the programme, but just before we leave this subject, somebody mentioned to me today, Chris, I don't know if you've heard about this notion of there being a silver lining in the COVID cloud, that in cases like the universities, that the importance of cleaning staff and hygiene staff are going to be far more important. There's going to be more jobs generated for people in that sector. And also in the manufacture of PPE, which we now know in Scotland we have a manufacturing sector for. How do you think COVID-19 is going to change the way the Scottish job market is configured?
Well, it certainly could do. I think that you've touched on something which is probably pertinent to what's going to be happening down here in the next couple of days, and that is what you've just said there about care and cleaning and all of these issues. I think that what COVID has exposed is just who exactly is a key worker and who exactly is fundamental to the economy. What is interesting, of course, is that many of the skills and trades that you've mentioned there are traditionally low paid to the point that they would not qualify, that people who are an EU national or anyone else would not meet the earnings thresholds for the immigration bill. I think that there's a lot of people who have carried out an enormous amount of work to protect us all, and they all deserve, at the very minimum, an interim above inflation pay rise.
I think that's an excellent way to end that piece, Chris. Thank you very much. Anyway, we have run out of time in a packed programme tonight, so I'd like to thank my guests. Both Chris Stevens, MP, and also here in the studio, my regular contributor, Sam Payton. Thanks again, Sam.
Thank you.
And at this time of the evening, it's my tradition to ask you to help support Broadcasting Scotland. So if you enjoy our programmes and you want to see more of them, please become a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, and to do that, please follow the directions on your screen now by going to www.broadcastingscotland.scot/register. I'll see you again on Thursday, but that's it from the Monday crew here at Scotland at 7. A very good night to you. We're out.